Hey everyone, and welcome to the 8-Figure Agent Podcast. My name is Jared Larsen, and I'm joined by my co-host Matt Walker, CEO of Swivel, the world's most flexible financial services CRM. Our mission is to build community, a community where we can empower each other to achieve remarkable success in the financial sector. Join Matt and me every week as we will motivate you to reach new heights in your career and unlock your full potential. Reaching your next level of success starts now. Welcome back to the 8-Figure Agent. I'm Jared Larsen alongside my co-host Matt Walker. And today we've got a special guest, Karson Woodmansee. And my relationship actually started with Karson when Matt and I went down to Las Vegas and we did a seminar. And as Matt was teaching, there was a gentleman in the crowd that he just stood out. And I don't know if you've ever been in an area where a large group of people or a crowd and somebody stands out. That was Karson. Not only did he stand out from a big personality standpoint, he stood out with intelligence and some of the questions that he was asking us. Matt and I said, man, this guy is different. There's something about this guy we've got to know. And I remember, Matt, we spent probably an hour, 2 hours afterwards just talking with Karson, getting to know him. And we said, this is somebody that's going somewhere and we need to have on our podcast, right, Matt?
Yeah, it was you do these seminars, you meet different people, and every once in a while you keep locking eyes with someone. That was Karson. So we're thrilled to have you, excited to have you here, and excited to learn from you today.
Awesome. Super appreciative to be here.
We are pumped. Before we start this, I have to start with something off the records. Maybe listeners don't even care, but I understand that you are like a YouTube sensation, influencer extraordinary. I don't even know what it was, but I type in your name and you pop up with this thing, and apparently you're a singer or something, and 700,000 views. What on earth is this all about?
So funny you should ask. In my senior year, I was really good friends with a family that has a YouTube channel, and they were wanting to do this video with Disney collaborating, and they were like, Karson, you look just like this character. We need you to sing this thing. And I was like, well, I've actually not really sang in front of people. I'm usually just strictly a shower singer, but I'll give it a rip. And next thing you know, I'm in a recording studio. We're going up to mountains to film, and this thing took off. The actual original video has something like 54 or 55 million views. The orchestral version has like 700,000 views. And I guess it just went really viral in the Philippines and in Europe, because next thing you know, my Facebook is getting all kinds of friend requests from all over the world. And I'm like, I'm 18 years old, like, leave me alone. I don't know what I did. And just kind of bumbled into that. But fortunately, it helped a lot with like paying for the mission and paying for that opportunity for me to go. So that's how that happened. I usually forget that I even did it. And then people are like, oh, I looked you up and I saw this. I'm like, oh no, I'm never going to escape it. So that's where that came from.
So for those of you, if you don't even listen to this podcast at all, you need to at least go YouTube, Karson Woodmansee, and some Disney song. And believe it or not, this dude can sing. He can flat sing, right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it took me, I was like, did not put that together, but it's fun. It's a good shocker.
Okay, so let's jump into this, Karson. I want to focus on, obviously, you're president and CEO of GalvaCare. This is a senior product focusing in the Medicare space. But before we do that, there's some things in your past that really have intrigued me and Matt. And one of those is your Eagle Scout. I think you were one of the youngest Eagle Scouts to ever receive the award. I want you to share a little bit about that. And then two, you got a black belt. Some I don't know anything about ninjas or black belting, but I would love for you to share a little bit of your Eagle Scout story and this black belt and what it's taught you and how it's helped you as you've jumped into business and in life.
So with the Eagle Scout, I had a little bit of a competitive edge. My dad was the stake young men's president for the young men in the area. And so if you don't know what that is, it's basically a very large group of youth. And I had the ability to see the scheduling for all of the badges and everything that was going to be going on, every event. And my dad told me if I got my Eagle Scout, he'd give me $1,000. And, as an 11-year-old kid, that's a lot of dough. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to just get on my bike and go wherever the heck the merit badges are that I need and get it done. And so I just got on my Huffy and just plowed all the way across town for about a year and a half. And I ended up getting my Eagle Scout just before my 13th birthday. And they posted it in the Salt Lake Tribune as one of the youngest Eagle Scouts ever recorded. And my Eagle Scout project was a ton of fun. I put together 700 bikes with a small team to give away to kids so they would have bikes and transportation. And so we made a pretty big splash in that. And the best part about that was that I went to all the campouts and just chilled. I didn't have to do anything. I just got to go to the rifle shooting. I got to go to the lake. I got to kick it. I took a hammock with me. Like, I just watched everybody else suffer and go through all of that while I had the burden of enjoying myself. So that's my story with the Eagle Scout. It was all money driven. But it did teach me, though, like, everything has a price, right? Like, I could pay the price of getting this done and getting it out of the way, but also being able to enjoy things, or I could just go with the flow, do what everybody else does, and get there eventually. I just was like, let's just knock it out. Let's just knock it out.
You talk about how to get a fast start in this business. That is the attitude. Like, that's the attitude to success. Like, knock out the hard stuff and then get it all out to make it fun. I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Karson, how did you, when all your buddies are playing on their Huffy, and when all of them are having sleepovers and jumping on the trampoline, like, what inspired you to ride your bike across town? Or I'm envisioning this little scrawny kid just like, I'm here for my merit badge. Like, what inspired you? What drove you other than the money? I get it, money drives so far, but there's something else there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing too is my family has a culture of achievement. Ever since I was little, my mom, whenever she talks to people, she's like, oh, this is what Carson's been doing, and he's doing really good at that, and this is what Corinne is doing, and she's doing this and whatever. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be top of the list every time. I was like, I'm gonna do something so cool. My mom's running around bragging about me all the time. And so we just had this culture of competition where we, as siblings, were trying to achieve and get to the top of mom's list, so to speak. And my dad also, he was very involved in that community for 11 years. He was the Stake Young Men's president. Like, he was there for a long time. And so I actually started in scouting when I was about 7. I got to go on the campouts with him and be around the guys, be around older guys than myself, which was really cool for a young guy, and was able to learn a lot more social skills because of that, and be able to experience a lot more just life with older people. And I definitely think that carried over into my career also, was trying to understand people who are older than me and people who I admired and trying to connect with them. And so the scouting experience actually ran a lot deeper into my development than I realized initially. But that's a part of the reason also, is like, I love to make my parents proud, and I like to just be at the top of that bragging list every day. So there you have it.
So, Karson, this carries over then into the second piece of your life that I'm intrigued to hear a little bit more about this. But you decide to jump into this black belt journey. I don't even know what that looks like or sounds like, but I can only imagine it's extremely intense. It's very hard. Tell us about that and what you learned as a result.
Sure. So actually, it's a little interesting. When I was younger, I had a really bad problem with fight or flight anxiety. My brain just, when something would happen that surprised me, I would either fight or run away. So if it was a threat that was like same or less, I would fight. If it was greater, I would run. And so when I was younger at school, I got in somewhere around like 35 fights between kindergarten and second grade. Like, a lot of fists when I was little.
You're at the top of your mom's list for a different conversation at that time.
That's right. That's right. Yep. And it was actually really a big blessing for me. I know that sounds crazy to say out loud, but the reason why is because it was a time where in psychology, they were really questioning a lot of things like, are there really bad apples or are there kids that just have challenges? And I was one of those kids that had challenges. And so when I was 4 years old, I was going to the state for help. They were giving me psychiatric care. And the doctor said, you should put Karson into martial arts, because if you put him into martial arts, he'll be able to condition his mind to recognize this is an attack, this is training, this was an accident, and he'll be able to slow down his brain from going boom into that fight or flight state. And so I actually started in martial arts when I was 4 years old, and I left it when I was about 13. And so a lot of why I got so far in martial arts was just the time that I spent in it. It was very therapeutic for me. It made me very competitive, but it also taught me a lot of character from a very, very young age. I learned the importance of respect, learned the importance of discipline. I learned that the most important competition is with yourself, because I actually hated team sports. Because I would go to team sports and we would lose because some guy is a wuss and didn't do his best, and this guy let it get to his head. This guy was afraid of the pitcher. This guy, and it was just like, I showed up, I did everything I needed to do, and we still lost. This sucks. Because like, when you go into martial arts, if you lose, your fault. Nobody else's fault. And so I actually, when I did go to team sports, I was very competitive in that also, particularly baseball, did very well. And I think that being competitive with yourself is something that I definitely pulled out of Taekwondo. And even the last 2 years, why I left, I would never have left, but the last 2 years I switched dojos to someone who focused on training Olympians. That's all he did. He was like, I just want to train Olympians. And I had the experience and the know-how and was very fit. I went in there and it just destroyed the sacredness of the sport for me.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, I want to jump into some more industry-specific relevant questions. But before we do that, we ask every single guest one question. This is the easiest question to answer, and there's absolutely a right answer and a wrong answer. So, you know, in like first grade when the teacher's like, there's no such thing as a dumb question or a dumb answer, there really are in life, and we're here to teach that principle by asking this one question. What is your favorite cereal?
My favorite cereal is Colossal Berry Crunch with marshmallows. Favorite cereal.
So complex.
That is yes. We have never had a guest suggest that cereal. I don't even know what's going through your mind right now, Matt.
I know. I feel like that would be the answer of anyone who works at a circus. That's the cereal that they would get.
And we're going to dive into that circus right now. So, Karson, welcome us into your circus and tell our audience a little bit of your story. And I want you to focus on why you even got into this industry.
Definitely. So, my story when I got in the industry was got back from my mission and was looking at going to school. I'd always wanted to be in entrepreneurship. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. My father is a chiropractor and has always had his own practice. And my mother co-founded the first renewable energy finance company that works with banks in North America. And so I've always been around business-minded people, very intelligent people, very creative people, and I always admired those people for pioneering something that never existed and being able to take on challenges and turn them into opportunities. And so when I came home, I was like, do I go to school? What do I want to do? And I was like, I just want to get to work and figure out like what I'm good at. Like I want to know like what I want, like what can I do? So got into sales because I wanted to learn how to best use my communication. I've always had great people skills and the ability to learn products and what have you. And so got into the car business, did really well there. My first month I sucked because I was studying. I always study and pay the price of knowledge, and then I focus on mastery. And so even from my first job at the car dealership, I sucked the first month and people were like, you're not going to be in this business. The next month I was the best in the dealership because I went to the service drive and I said, hey, I see cars coming through here all day long. Can you tell me what your appointments are going to be like tomorrow? What year, how many miles, if they financed with us? And they were like, yeah. I was like, great, give me all of that. And so every day I would just sit there and I would look up the blue book value of the cars coming in the next day. And I would see how much their repair is going to be. And I would go down and I'd have like 15 printouts. And I'd say, Jim, where are you at? Jim with the RAV4. Jim. And I'd go over to him. I'm like, Jim, I got great news for you. You don't have to pay a thing for your repair today because I want to buy your car and put you in a brand new RAV4 with the same payment, but all the new features without any of these repairs. You want to take it for a drive? I just start dangling the keys right in front of them. And they got nothing better to do, so they go with me. And that's how I ended up selling a lot of cars. Like a lot of cars is like 8 or above in the car business. I did 14 my next month, my second month in the business, just by doing that. And so I took that and I just did really, really well. Got a few rewards for it. And then I was like, hey, you know what? I could do this. This is a lot of fun. Like figuring out the best way to do this is as a hoot. So I got married and I was like, I want to go do door-to-door pest control because I can make a ton of money and then that'll give us some cushion to have some more honeymoon phase with my wife and figure out like what I want to do in business and what have you. So went to Oregon and crushed it out there. Got back, had more money than a 22-year-old probably should have, and spent the time just studying. I just was picking up on things from Robert Kiyosaki, from Warren Buffett, Benjamin Graham, Tony Robbins, all of these guys who I've always been reading. I was just like, I want to get in a business where I can get renewable money, where I can get passive income, where I can find a way to not have to die at my desk or watch my kids grow up as pictures on my desk either. And so I started looking at the few industries that offer that, and insurance was a clear pick. And then I applied to 15 agencies, and I had 9 interviews, and I chose an American Senior Benefits agency, which was wonderful for me to start in. Same thing, got into the business, first month, pancake, nothing. And it was December, so December is historically a slower month for Medicare because it's just after AEP. Everybody's done with talking about Medicare, so I just took advantage of that. January, I wrote 48 policies. It was so stupid how I did it. I created this little ad, and it was a postcard, and the postcard showed an old guy, and he looked down at his gut, and there's a Chevy truck, and the hood's popped. And it says, most people don't know what's going on under their hood. They could be going to the hospital at any time, and they also don't know what's going to be covered or not covered. Time to check under the hood. And then I had my number there. And for some reason, that stupid little postcard did really well. People were freaking out, like, I don't know what I have, what I don't have. I don't know. Like, I haven't had a checkup in a while. Like, I don't know. Like, all the paranoid people. And it was a ton of fun to just go out and meet these aluminum hat Medicare people for the first 2 months of my business and be able to help them. So that's what happened when I got into the business. And within 6 months, I had saved enough money and done well enough that I felt confident to move from West Jordan, Utah, to open the Las Vegas, Nevada office.
I love that story, and by the way, I didn't know that part of the story. That was absolutely fantastic. So that mailer that you sent out, was it just on a little postcard, or was it kind of a full-page thing, or how did you do it?
It was just a postcard. I learned from the dealership that postcards are seen a lot more often because you don't have to open it, and people will kind of ruminate more on a postcard than they would on an envelope. And so I was like, these postcards are like 25 cents, if that. Like, let's just blast these people that we can't get a hold of. And we blasted them out, and I got a great response. So it was a ton of fun. I love doing that, experimenting in marketing and figuring out what works, what doesn't work, pivoting a little bit here or there. But I just know that paranoia works, and so I decided that that would be a great little ad to send out there.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Karson, so okay, so now we transition. You're in Las Vegas and you're leading a team or building a team or prepping to do something of that nature. I think I remember you telling me something in Las Vegas about a bigger purpose in the Medicare space, a bigger mission. And you found, I can't remember the story. I'd love for you to share this if you remember or recall what we were talking about, but there was something bigger that was driving you to help people in the Medicare space, whether it was they had no information or what was that about? Can you recall that conversation?
Yes, I do. I've had this conversation many times. So for me, I got to Vegas. We started selling a lot. The team started growing. I got to about 15 agents. That's the biggest I ever got. So it wasn't a huge operation, but it was pretty decent. And I just kept feeling like every home I went to was devastating. Like people were not living the American dream. They weren't making the money that they wanted to. They didn't have the nest eggs that they wanted to have. And I just felt like if I had met them earlier, they could have been in a far greater position. And I was like, how can we get to them earlier? How can we fix this problem? How can we get them to see value sooner? Because this is really sad. Like, it made me really sad to see over and over again people in the same position of being just completely financially bankrupt. And I decided to take it personally. I was like, you know what? Like, this disturbs me that I'm only seeing them now. And how do I fix it? And so I decided to allow that disturbance to create something that was big. And so I think in this business, it's very important that a person does it because it aligns with their purpose, not because they want to make money, not because they want to create the passive income or create a massive MLM. I think it has to be your purpose. And the thing that I find interesting as I get older, as I think about purpose is always there. It's right in the middle of who you are. But depending on your life and how you're living, you orbit closer or sometimes farther from that purpose. And so I think if you are really clear, okay, this is why I'm here, this is what I'm doing, this is who I am, then that is where you become very successful in this business because now people call it a why. I don't think it's a why. Why? You make money. So what? What do you do? I think it has to be because that's your purpose. And when I found my purpose is what Jared's talking about right now. I discovered that my purpose was to take the knowledge I learned from my mom, which is finance in the renewable energy space, and put it into Medicare. And I know that my purpose, like when I'm really close to that, what I bring to the world is movement. I create movements. When I was a missionary for the church, I could take an area and create insane momentum and reactivate people. And I could help baptize a lot of people. And in business, I could help people understand that there's a mission, a purpose greater than themselves, and that I can get movement from them. And so that's what really turned the lights on for me in my Medicare business was being like, I'm supposed to bring a movement because now people feel like they're in France and they're revolting and they're piling up the furniture and they're like, yeah, we're in the movement. We're making this happen. And that's when things really start to happen in this business is when people are like renting their coats, getting on their powdered wigs and muskets and going to war. And that's something that I definitely think I brought to the space. But what Jared's talking about is I saw a vision of a way to team up with the hospital and audit the future. That's what the mission is. And people will hear that and say, audit the future? How can you audit the future? Like, I do taxes in the past. Like, we do these deductions. We do this, that, the other. We don't audit the future. And I'm like, well, we can because In the hospital, they have to take everybody in. It's just a legal obligation. They have to save everybody's life, the Hippocratic Oath, right? And what's difficult about that is that finance is always the reverse question. They bring you in, you just robbed the 7-Eleven, you got shot in the chest, they have to save your life. They got to pay the doctor, they got to pay the specialist, they got to pay the nurses. You think a guy who's robbing a 7-Eleven has good coverage? No way. So the hospital's taking that loss. And I'm just thinking to myself, what if we could have met that robber like 6 months ago and got him on a plan and got him something that would make it so that when he does go to the hospital, he's going to be covered and the hospital doesn't have to take a huge financial loss because some guy decided to wake up and rob a store. And so I started putting my gourd on it, and I started really thinking about it, mapping it out, studying HIPAA. And I'd been in that journey for about 8 months. And then I got invited to go to some schwanky little like tavern steakhouse by some technology guys. And I was like, I'm going to go check it out. And I had met with some big time Salesforce programmers, some guys that worked with Python and all these other groups. And I was just not impressed. I felt like the systems were non intuitive. I felt like it was very hard to work and manage. And I met with then advisor branch, now Swivel, and it just felt like a glove. Like I'd met my match, the slipper fit. And so that's how I ended up meeting you guys. And to expand a little bit more on that too, a part of my movement is that with private equity bankers buying everybody up, and you know who I'm talking about, I'm not going to talk about them on the podcast, but everybody's selling their business these days. And you got to think to yourself, all of these little guys got in the business so they can have a book and they can retire and live on their renewals. But most of these advisors die at their desk, as we all know. And so I wanted to create a way where that little guy who knows the right things, who has the people skills, who has the product knowledge, who has been in the business long enough and not been shot by the sheriff or been breaking rules or laws left and right. I wanted to empower that guy. I wanted to give him a platform and data and training and resources so that that guy could make a huge splash and have more control over his business than ever before and be known as the billing consultant for this hospital. And so that's been a huge part of the movement as well. And I call it the movement because GalvaCare is a movement. It's not a business. It's galvacare.org because it's a movement.
You talk about this hospital, and I don't know, Matt and I are privy to maybe some of the model that you're running right now. Talk to us about your purpose, right? And then this ability to watch out for the small guy, and then what you created and how you're actually doing that. Share what you feel comfortable with, obviously, but this is a really unique business model.
Yeah, definitely. So the business model is I work with hospitals and I show them exactly what we train to. Every scenario and what the agent is going to say and what they're not going to say. And the agent agrees to follow that script because of the compliance degree that we're held to. It's not just AHIP, it's not just CMS, it's also HIPAA, right? And I walk the hospital through exactly what we're going to do. Because the thing that most people fail to understand with hospitals is that hospitals are concerned about infringement. They're concerned about liability. And that's why they don't integrate with a lot of third parties, because they don't want to expose themselves to unnecessary liability. And so I took the liability approach and was like, this is what we approve that they're going to say, and this is what they're going to do. If they go off the reserve, then we hold them solely liable. You're not liable, we're not liable, because you agreed to what they're saying here. We told you this is what they assigned to agree to, and therefore if they go off the reserve, they're fully liable for what they do. And that has allowed an environment for the hospital to acknowledge that this could be a very viable solution for them. the model is that I train them up, and I train them in a way that they can't screw up. Like literally, if you don't know which priority group someone's in the VA, you don't know which level of Medicaid they have, the tools that we've built, you will be able to find out or know what the compliant answer is. And it's just literally going through and practicing and familiarizing yourself with that process over and over and over again. And then once you pass a test, which is called the Medicare MD course, which is a course that I created, you get the certification, and then you're able to then pursue a hospital relationship. And then once you're in the hospital, then we're giving you access to certain data points as finance goes, not healthcare goes, to be able to assist the hospital in identifying the riskiest population that is going to them for care, and being able to find plans that are more optimized for the hospital and the patient based on the patient's needs. And so we allow you to have a bridge to be integrated into the hospital. You are the medical billing consultant for XYZ hospital, and you are able to then reach out to the patients as a part of the hospital organization and say, hey, this is Chad with UMC, and I'm calling because I'm the medical billing consultant and I noticed some deficiencies in your billing. Just didn't want you to pay more than anybody else. Let me verify I have everything correct on file. And now the agent has credibility and authority unlike ever before. You're not just calling a mailer. You're not just calling some random lead. You are the guy in that area. They would be foolish to go anywhere else. And so that's the model that we have.
So what I giving our listeners some context here, one of the things that I love that you said is you talked about how you sold cars. And, the start of the first month at zero, and you were looking for how do I find someone with a need and then quickly make it better for them in large quantities. And a brilliant idea, right? Go just find who's fixing their car, find the financial structure on it, find a way to who's getting it to have to pay a big bill, and we're going to not have to make you pay that. Your payments are going to be the same. I mean, just brilliant. It seems like a very easy way to sell a car. Not only that, they're captive for a while their car's in to drive around with you. Mm-hmm. I just feel like all you did is you took that to Medicare. It's the exact same thing
Yep.
you did to Medicare. And it's so for those who are wondering, like, why, someone who's been in a business, done Medicare, done senior products, sold a business in that, all of a sudden gets completely blown away, thinks he's heard everything, and then I meet Karson and see what he's doing. I was like, holy cow, this is on a totally different level. Because anyone who's in Medicare knows it's the lead. And then once you have the lead, what kind of lead do you have? Do you have a lead that is an internet lead that you're going to have a hard time keeping the residuals going because they're only committed to price? Now you got a situation where you get price and relationship and the small guy in a bigger picture. It's brilliant. Just love it. Yeah.
So Karson, I totally agree with Matt. It's so intriguing. And each of these interviews, Matt, we learned something about success. And here what I'm really learning is, Karson, from 4, when you jumped into Ninja Camp and then into your Eagle Scout, this drive and this desire, and then all the way through your life, you've been finding ways to achieve at a high level, not at the aggrandizement of yourself, but at the expense of creating change, or you call it the movement. And I think it's so cool to see how you mastered that in cars. You've taken it to the insurance space and world. I want to ask you, what's some advice that you're giving agents? Because like the used car salesman, I jump into the industry and I sit down at the desk and somebody tells me to go start talking to people and sell cars. Or I sit down and they say, here, make a list of 100 people that you know, start talking, right? What advice do you give them? What differentiates you from any other agency in the world?
I think that the big thing that I teach new agents is that you need to pay the price to be here. And paying the price to be here means that you're not going to make a lot of money the first 3 months. You're going to learn while you earn, And that has a price. And the price is that you're going to have to be studying and practicing and sweating in the gym so you don't bleed on the battlefield, as we've heard before, right? And that's the price that you're going to pay. But that the price that you pay will be such an immense blessing to you, because you're going to live like nobody else right now. You're going to make like nothing, and you're going to be learning and sweating and all of that. But then later you're going to live like nobody else also, and you're going to have these huge blessings in your life. You're going to have renewals, and you're going to have a level of financial prowess that nobody your age will have. And that's why you're here. And so I teach new agents very fundamental things. I try to keep it as simple as possible. But the big thing that's different between my model and everybody else's is I think that people need to have something bigger than themselves to strive for. I think that in most Medicare operations or senior product operations, it's like you get a higher comp, but the job doesn't change unless you want to train and recruit. And if you train and recruit, you're going to be just churning through people, and you're going to be trying to create financial goals around other people, and it's just not going to work. You have to find ways to help people see the next blessing if they pay this price. And for me, it was, okay, you're going to get in here. I'll teach you what you need to know, but I'm not going to trust you with a hospital until I know that you're competent. And competency comes with time. You're going to have to go to people's homes. You're going to have to buy leads. You're going to have to call those leads so you learn how to screw up on your own dime. And you're going to show me that you can do the job. And then as you stay and as you do these things and you pass off the course, and I go with you and we role play or whatnot, and you gain my confidence, then I can trust you with the healthcare situation. And so newer agents do way more production for me than I've seen with other companies, because they see the carrot at the end. They're like, man, if I can get a hospital, average hospital has 25,000 patients that I can work with to 45,000 patients to work with. I get there, I'm golden. And then I also show them all the benefits, like, well, on Swivel, we're able to do passive trickle email campaigns, text campaigns, all these other campaigns that will be generating appointments for you. And you'll be able to call, and you'll be on the caller ID of the hospital. So you'll have a velocity to appointment like nobody else. But you have to pay the price today.
Yeah.
And I think that people get into the business and they vastly overestimate their ability, and they vastly underestimate how much there has to be done. And I think that what creates a lot of difficulty for new agents also is there's a lot of ambiguity that you can create in the business, where it's like, what should I do right now? Should I study this? Should I do this? If I get better at that, I can make more money. Maybe I should do that. And so I think keeping it real simple for new agents, like, look, studying is important. Practicing is important. Reading is important. Set 2 new appointments a day. Don't do a single bleeping thing until you've set 2 new appointments. Not reschedules, new appointments. Because if you set 2 new appointments, whether they attend or don't attend, you've paid the price to be here. And then guess what? You could take that knowledge and that study and go out there. And just keeping it simple like that. Just say, look, you're not an agent unless you do what agents do. And an agent sets 2 new appointments a day. So in the morning, I'd run around. If people are getting coffee or they're talking to each other, I'm like, hey, did you set your 2 new appointments? Did you do your 2 new appointments? You got your 2 new appointments? I just run around like the boy that cried wolf until everybody had their 2 new appointments. And then it's like, okay, now everybody's done that. Let's go in, let's rehearse, let's do this, let's practice.
So Karson, with the fight or flight anxiety that you had as a kid, one, tell me a little bit more about it, but the second, I'm very interested in how or if that still affects you to this day, or what you've learned from working through that strengthens you now. How's that perceived weakness become a strength to you in what you do today?
That's a really big question. So yes, I still have moments with it today. Um, and what it was is formerly was just a very touchy medulla. I just would sense problems that maybe weren't there, that were just perceived, right? Like I'd be on a playground and we're playing a game, someone pushed me harder than I anticipated. Boom, threat. And so it made it difficult to have friends when I was younger. I would have outbursts and fight people and beat them up, or I'd run away. And it was really tough because like it wasn't a part of me. Like I'd literally black out, and then a few seconds later I'd come to, and people are like in shock and afraid, and I'm like and I'm shaking. Like what happened? Like it was very intense and difficult when I was younger, and had to work through all of that when I was little, through the martial arts and exposure and help with the state. And what it did was it taught me to be very self aware from a very young age, which I think is a huge asset in life. I think that people who are not self aware tend to be very destructive without even noticing it or being aware that their behaviors are destructive. And so it's been a huge strength and a huge asset to me because I'm very in tune with myself. And I don't want to say like ooey gooey with my feelings or anything like that, but I'm very aware of what I need and what I'm feeling, and I'm very aware of, okay, what is this coming from? How can I address this? And a big part of it is just mood, right? Like a lot of times, especially as guys, like we don't care what's happening because how we feel isn't going to pay the rent. How we feel isn't going to pay our taxes, right? And so we just power through, but that ends up gnawing away at our spirit because it makes us feel like, well, no one cares. Like, what's the point? Why do you feel this way? And so a lot of men tend to like bottle that up and not be a feeler or identify what could potentially be causing these cues in the subconscious mind. And so it's been great for me because I'm able to look at people, and since I'm aware of myself, I can see them and be like, hey, like I don't know what it is, but just my gut tells me you're going through something, man. What's going on? And they're like, yeah, like I've been going through this thing. I'm like, well, tell me about that. And I have a lot of really good conversations with particularly men because I'm able to be vulnerable with them and like create a way for them to feel comfortable to talk about stuff. When I was a kid, I went through this stuff and I learned how to process emotions and kind of put them in the right categories. I think that it taught me that a lot of people understand that they have a brain, but they don't understand their operating system. They don't know how their brain works. Like if you ask a person, how do you make decisions? And they can't tell you step by step how they make decisions. It's like there's 8 steps. You get a cue. That cue goes into this process where you're trying to identify, is this going to help me avoid pain and create pleasure, right? And you go through, and every decision you make goes through this wheel of decisions that you make. And most people are like, I didn't even notice that. And it's like, well, mature people find ways to, when it gets into that pain versus pleasure process, they decide what's going to give me the greatest pleasure later, and I can lean into the pain now. And most people, that concept completely eludes them. They're like, what? Like, deal with pain now to have pleasure later? What? They're like, no, I'm going to go home. I'm going to watch TV instead of work on my skills, or I'm going to do this instead of improve myself, or I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. And so, unfortunately, since people don't understand their operating system, they end up being indulgent creatures where all they care about is what they can get today. And I can honestly say there was about a 9 to 10 month period in my life very recently where I was very indulgent. I was like, I'm going to get this done so I can play video games. I'm going to get this done so I can eat what I want. I can get this done so I can do this. And I was freaking miserable. And why I got there is really easy to see now, but it was just I just felt like things weren't working in my life, and these were the few things I could control. And it was really tough for me for a while, but fortunately, I was able to become aware, break those patterns, and that's why recently I've lost a lot of weight and I've been doing really, really well emotionally, financially, in many, many ways. Is because of the self-awareness that came from when I was a kid.
This is really a story of triumph, Karson, and I'm sitting here listening to you explain how this perceived weakness as a child or fight or flight, it could be a negative thing, but what I'm taking from this, me personally, and hopefully this can relate to some other people, is there's opportunity to see weaknesses and take these weaknesses and learn how to, over a period of time and with some patience, probably in a lot of humility, understand how to start mastering or how to endure, or how to go through these challenges that we have. And then on the opposite side or the flip side of that, I'm saying, well, this could be a superpower. You could take this and instead of fighting someone or choosing to run away, you could actually run to them with love. You could run to them with kindness. You could run to them with help or candor or care or honesty or whatever the case may be. But I'm seeing how that's blessing you in your business and in your own personal life. And I'm so grateful for you for coming on here today and sharing it. I've got two last questions for you before we wrap up. Number one, how can our listeners get in touch with you and your agency?
Yeah, great question. I mean, anybody is welcome to email me. It's Karson, Karson, at GalvaCare, GalvaCare.org. Feel free to reach out to me with questions, or if you want insights, like I'm happy to help. And like I'm not a shyster when it comes to trade secrets. Like I definitely want to see people succeed. I want to see people do well. I don't have to be financially blessed. I want to be the blessing. And so don't be shy. Reach out anytime. I remember being a newer agent and having these questions and wanting to know what to do. And I appreciate people who are just getting into the journey, just getting into the mix and being able to help. And so reach out to me there, and would love to hear from any listeners for sure.
Karson, give us your last thought, the one thing that you have to have our listeners know or hear today on this podcast.
I think the biggest thing that I would say is that you need to be organized and do what works while you build what you want. I think that because we work for ourselves, organization is the biggest key to consistency in the business. Just saying, you know what? Every day when I get to the office from blank time to blank time, all I do is this. When I'm at this time of the day, I'm doing this. When I'm at this time of the day, I'm doing this. And just stick to what works. And once you do what works, then build on what you want. I would say that I've had some expensive lessons in this business where I encouraged agents to study instead of doing the fundamentals, where I would have agents be better at this, like sharpen the sword before you go to battle type of situations. And I've seen how that affected them. They became so focused on studying that they felt overwhelmed. And then when they were with people, they fumbled their words. They didn't know what to say. They were very incoherent because they had complicated the business. Honestly, the business isn't a hard business. It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Simple and easy are different things, right? I could say walk up the mountain. Very simple. Easy depends on the mountain, right? And so I think having organization, sticking to what works, and then build what you want to build after you've done what works is so pivotal in creating consistency. I think that it's important to know that what you feel is a cue, but you need to understand that paying the price today is going to take care of tomorrow. Like no one's going to take care of older you except you. You can't hope that you're going to receive some big inheritance and that will save your butt. Like you have to take care of older you. And older you is going to have less energy and be less capable. So you have to do something dramatic today to do that. And I've seen time and again, as I've met with people in Medicare, the people that didn't pay that price today when they were younger, man, they regret it. They don't live a life that we want to live. And so if you want to get to that point, you have to pay the price today. And that means dealing with the suck. Do the suckiest things at the beginning of the day. Set the appointments first thing in the day. Just get them out of the way. You know you have to see people. Like if you're a store and no one comes through the door, you're not going to be in business very long. So you have to set your dang appointments and you have to get out there and do well. And when you get in front of people, most of the time it's really easy. I did want to leave with like a role play, like a simple little role play for the podcast listeners. When you're new in the business, it's super important that you have a very strong personal and professional intro. I think that that's where people really decide if they're going to buy from you or not. If you ask me, it's where people can build trust and understand who you are and what you bring. So I want to share mine with you, and I want you listeners to think about how you can use it. So I usually start with some personal stuff and lead into why I do what I do professionally. So that way the consumer can connect the dots and be able to follow why I do what I do, and it makes sense. So here's mine. Ready? Boom. When you turn 18 in my family, you get two choices, two paths in life. You either go in the military, which 5 of my uncles did that, or you go on a mission. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go in the military. They're gonna pay me. They're gonna help me with school. Chicks dig the military guys. Like I think I'm gonna do that. And I just remember thinking to myself, I was like, if I go on a mission and I get called to like Alabama, that would suck. I was like, but I do love God. I love the Lord. So maybe I should give him a shot. I was like, so I prayed. I said, Heavenly Father, if you want me to go on a mission, it's got to be somewhere really cool, or I'm going to go in the military. I was very, very 18-year-old when I said this prayer. And he must have a sense of humor because he sent me to Barcelona, Spain. And the lessons I learned there as a 19-year-old boy were phenomenal. I was able to learn what it's like to be an immigrant, to not speak a language, to Google Translate my groceries and think I bought tuna cans and I bought cat food. And going through the humbling experience of why I think America is so great. And I was placed into leadership roles and was able to help and bless and serve so many people. And then after 2 years, like everybody else, they send you home and it felt like this. Plah! 2 years was about everybody else. Now it's about me. Where am I going to go to school? Who am I going to date? What am I going to drive? And I had a super hard time when I first got home. And I just decided, you know what? Nothing's changed. I could still have a mission. And my mission is to bless people, to serve people, and to lift my community. And that's why I got into this business. Because every day I get to meet with people who have contributed to this wonderful society, who have built this as teachers, as construction workers, and now I get to bless you. And I do that in a very unique way. I'm a broker, which means that I work with hundreds of companies, pretty much every company under the sun, come to think of it. So the only reason why someone doesn't buy from me is because they don't like me, which is impossible. So what I do is I take your situation, I compare you to everybody, and I show you the list. So you know there's nothing up my sleeves. Because I find that everybody loves to shop, but no one likes to be sold. And so I let you pick. I may make a suggestion based off of experience, customer experience, what have you, but you pick, and that's the one we're going to go with. So without further ado, do you have any questions before we go over Medicare 101? That's my personal and professional intro. And I can honestly say that people at that moment, they go from this to, oh, okay. Like physically you can see them just diffuse because like they know that my agenda is I'm going to find what works. You're going to shop. You're going to pick. So the only reason you wouldn't buy is you don't like me. I literally set the stage for success. And I think that that's so important when you're a new agent is to be able to build that trust and rapport, figure out how in your personal life, who you are and what you've done directly correlates with why you're sitting at that kitchen table with them. So that's the best tool I can give to an agent if I can only give them one tool.
Karson, you were so awesome. I want to thank you. deeply for coming on here, sharing your passion, man. This guy is crazy. I love you, Karson. He always brings it. He's totally different. He's unlike anybody else. There were so many gold nuggets today. And the one that I want to leave our audience with as we conclude is simple and easy are not the same thing. It could be simple, but depending on what mountain's in front of you determines the easy or hard. And I hope that each of you, like Karson with his fight or flight, won't run from the problem, won't fight it, but you'll choose the mountain that you need to climb. I want to thank everybody for joining us on the 8-Figure Agent today. I hope you're doing well, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow us on your preferred platform wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, success loves company, so share this podcast with someone who you think might enjoy it too, and let's build a community together. Let's keep the momentum going until the next episode drops. And hey, if you got any questions or topic ideas that you would like us to focus on, send us a message on social media. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time.